All right, everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, glad to be back.
Today, we're tackling something that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially, election season's coming up.
Oh, yeah.
You get in that voting booth and you look at the ballot, and sometimes it feels like
You're picking
you're picking between like...
the lesser of two evils.
I know,
right?
So we're going to kind of unpack that whole concept of, this idea. Is it even morally okay
Yeah,
to vote for someone that you don't necessarily agree with? 100%.
absolutely.
And to help us kind of dissect this, we've got a clip from Catholic theologian Father Chad Ripperger.
Okay.
So let's take a listen to what he has to say.
Well, the church has always said that we have a duty as citizens of a particular country to actually to vote. We actually have this duty to vote. There can be some things that can put that aside, but as a general rule, we have an obligation to actually vote. And so people will say, well, yeah, but right now we've got, for example, candidates who are not perfect. One actually holds stuff that's really evil, another guy that holds stuff that's also evil, but it's not as bad, etc. And so I don't want to vote for, and this is actually true even in relationship to other forms of legislation, because this discussion of this has been reiterated throughout the history of the church, all the way up even through John Paul II had actually talked about it. So, but the basic principle is that in a situation like that, then your obligation is to vote for the lesser of two evils. And the reason being is because in the lesser of two evils, people say, well, you're voting for evil. No, you're actually not voting for evil. When you're voting for a lesser evil, you're not voting for the person's evil or for the evil that the thing is doing. What you're voting to is to preserve the good that would be lost if the other opponent got in who's more evil, or if the legislation got passed in which was actually even worse, or what have you. So the point is you're voting to preserve the good. And in that sense, it's a morally good act. And also if you don't do that, then you may be responsible if a more evil person gets in because of a failure on your part to vote, or the citizenry's to vote for the lesser of two evils, then it's the sin of negligence because you've actually let somebody who's more evil get into that particular thing. So we have an obligation to vote for the lesser of two evils in order to be able to mitigate the evil and the damage that's actually done. And that's our obligation.
So essentially, I think what Father Ripperger is getting at is that it's less about saying, I endorse every single thing that this person stands for.
Right.
It's more about saying, okay, given the choices that I have, which one is going to result in the most good? Or maybe
the least bad.
the least bad.
Yeah, exactly.
The least amount of damage, right?
That's a really good way to put it.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, we're never going to have perfect choices, are we?
No.
I mean, it's kind of a utopian ideal to think that we're ever going to find a candidate that we agree with 100% on everything.
Yeah, it seems like it's almost, even outside of politics, just a life principle.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to choose the best of
the bad options.
Yeah, the best of the bad options.
Right.
And it's not settling. It's just being strategic and saying, well, this is going to be the least harmful.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And I think Father Ripperger is tapping into something that philosophers have been talking about for centuries, this whole idea of the lesser of two evils.
Right.
It's not a new concept at all.
So how do we then kind of put this into practice?
Yeah.
Like when we're looking at an election, how do we figure out what that good is that we're trying to preserve?
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It really comes down to your values, I think.
Okay.
Your priorities as an individual and as as part of a community. What are the things that you hold most dear? Is it religious freedom? Is it economic equality?
Yeah.
Is it, environmental protection?
Yeah.
Whatever those core values are for you, that's what you're trying to protect when you go into that voting booth.
It's not just about picking a person. It's about picking
a set of policies.
Yeah, a platform, a set of outcomes.
Exactly.
That are most aligned with the kind of world or the kind of country that you want to see.
I think that's a great way to put it.
So for someone listening right now who's maybe struggling with this,
sure,
what would you say to them?
I would say, really take some time to reflect on your values.
Okay.
What are the things that are non-negotiable for you? What are the things that you're willing to maybe compromise a little bit on?
Right.
And then look at the candidates.
Yeah.
Look at their platforms.
Yeah.
Look at their track records and ask yourself, which one of these candidates is going to best uphold the things that I care about the most, even if they're not perfect.
Even if they're not perfect.
Because let's face it, no one is.
Right.
And I think that's something that we really need to keep in mind when we're making these tough decisions.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's about choosing the path that leads to the least harm.
And most good. And the most good, exactly.
So the next time you're staring at that ballot, feeling that tension of, I don't love any of these options.
I've been there.
We've all been there. Just remember, it's not just about who you're voting for.
It's about what you're voting to protect.
It's about what you're voting to protect. Exactly. And that can, I think, give us a little bit of peace.
Absolutely.
When we're making those tough choices. Yeah. A little more clarity, a little more direction.
Yeah.
I think so.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye. Bye.